Before we begin this journey, I want to thank a friend of mine for bringing this story to my attention. In fact, it was her family member who played a key role in helping break this case wide open. Great Falls, Virginia, a quiet, affluent suburb nestled in Fairfax County, known for its sprawling estates, tree-lined roads, and proximity to the pulse of Washington, D.C. It's the kind of place where families feel safe and secrets rarely linger. But in August of 1995, a chilling crime unfolded. One so deeply buried, it took years to come to light. When the truth finally surfaced, it sent shockwaves through the community and tore through the heart of a close-knit family. This is the story of the Chen family and the dark deception that shattered the peace of Great Falls. Wu Chen and Yeh-mei Chen were originally from Taiwan and owned a heating and ventilation company in Taipei. Like many immigrant parents chasing the American dream, they came to the United States with hope and a plan. They brought their two sons, Raymond and 11-year-old Edward, to the U.S. to give them a better education and brighter future. As the years passed, their hard work paid off. The Chens eventually purchased a home in Great Falls, Virginia, one of 5 properties they would go on to own, a symbol of success, stability, and the life they had built on new soil. But behind the grandeur of real estate and opportunity, a much darker story was quietly taking shape. The Chens were deeply rooted in their Taiwanese culture. At home, they spoke Chinese, observed traditional customs, and regularly spent extended periods back in Taiwan. But like many immigrant families raising children in a new country, cultural lines began to blur, especially for the youngest son. Edward, or Ed, was quiet and reserved, a sharp contrast to his older brother, Raymond, who was outgoing and deeply involved in the local community. While Raymond embraced his Taiwanese roots, Ed was leaning into something different. He spoke in American slang, listened to Western music, and formed a close relationship with a girl named Mandy. At first, it was just that, a friendship. Mandy eventually married someone else and had a child. But after her marriage ended, that friendship with Ed quickly evolved into something more. To Ed, Mandy represented freedom, connection, and the American life that he was drawn to. But to his parents, Wu Hong and Yeh-mei Chen, she was a threat, not just to their values, but to the future they had envisioned for their son. They strongly objected to their relationship, primarily because Mandy wasn't Chinese. What had once been a quiet generational divide turned into open conflict in the Chen household. Cultural expectations clashed with personal identity, and the pressure inside was mounting. In 1994, Ed began attending the University of Virginia. Not long after, he moved Mandy and her young daughter to Charlottesville, into an apartment not far from his own. Their relationship was no longer a secret, and the Chens were furious. Concerned and ashamed, Wu Hong and Yeh-mei Chen took drastic action. They flew Ed back to Taipei, hoping psychiatric treatment would steer him away from the relationship and back toward the life they had planned for him. During that time, Raymond wrote a letter to Mandy that laid bare just how deep the disapproval ran. He wrote, "Just because you eat Chinese food or learn a few kicks, you would not understand our culture. Ed is a good catch, and I can see why you're interested in him. But we expect more of him. We expect him to go to the best school and marry the best girl. I wish you luck with you and your daughter. You must live with the consequences of your actions. My parents are heartbroken over your relationship." The pressure wasn't just emotional. It was cultural, generational, and deeply personal. And it was building towards something irreversible. In the spring of the following year, Ed told Mandy he was headed to Fredericksburg for a job interview. But then, nothing. Days passed, then a week. He didn't come back. Mandy was left confused and worried until she finally heard from him, more than a week later. Ed told her he was in Taiwan to have his wisdom tooth removed. A strange explanation, but he continued to send her money, assuring her things were fine. Months went by with little contact. Then in August, Ed reached out again, out of the blue. He told Mandy he was back in the States. More than that, he promised her that they'd finally be together. He reassured her calmly and confidently that her parents wouldn't be a problem anymore. It sounded too good to be true, and tragically, it was. Life went on. Ed and Mandy eventually got their own place. She became pregnant, and the two got married, starting the life they had once only imagined. For a while, things seemed calm, normal even. But then came March 19th, 2002. Fairfax County detectives received a chilling phone call. A woman on the line claimed her boyfriend had killed his entire family years ago. That same day, they arranged to meet her. Her name was Vicki Henry. Vicki told the detectives she met Ed back in 1998 during her time as a dancer at Camelot. Vicki told detectives she met Ed back in 1998 during her time as a dancer at Camelot, a well-known gentlemen's club on M Street in D.C. Their connection was instant. They moved in together quickly, and Ed showered her with lavish gifts, designer clothes, luxury cars, whatever she wanted. Despite living extravagantly, Ed didn't appear to have a job, yet the money never seemed to run out. But there was something strange. Ed rarely, if ever, spoke about his family. When Vicki asked, he gave a simple explanation. They had died in Taiwan years ago. It was vague, and she didn't press at first. But one day, while going through some of Ed's belongings, Vicki stumbled upon something that didn't make sense. Recent passports for his parents and his brother, all with active dates, well beyond when they supposedly deceased. Confused and alarmed, she confronted him, and what Ed revealed next would shake her to the core, and ultimately unravel one of Fairfax County's most deeply buried secrets. He told her he had fallen in love with a white woman, something that enraged his parents. In an attempt to break them apart, they sent him back to Taiwan. But when he returned to Virginia, something in him had shifted. He confessed that he bought a rifle and used it to kill his entire family, his mom, his father, and his brother, all gone. Ed told her calmly that he left them in the house for 4 years. She was stunned, and as the weight of his confession sank in, she eventually confided in someone else, his ex, Mandy. Vicki told detectives that Mandy knew about the murders too, and could back up everything she was saying. From there, detectives reached out to Ed's ex, Mandy. She had been carrying the weight of what she knew for years, and now finally, she was ready to let it go. Mandy told them how she and Ed met back in high school. He had been sweet, thoughtful, and incredibly generous. To her, he wasn't just a boyfriend. He was a lifeline during some of her most difficult years. But behind the kindness and charm was a darkness she hadn't fully understood until much later. Mandy told detectives that after Ed returned from Taiwan in 1995, he began to open up. But his story was murky, inconsistent, and deeply unsettling. At first, he told her he had killed someone for his parents. In exchange, he claimed they had promised to finally leave him alone. He said the body was in the Great Falls house, but over time, the story kept shifting. One day, the body was upstairs. The next, it was in the basement. The details didn't add up, and Mandy began to suspect he wasn't telling the truth. Eventually, Ed came clean, and what he told her was far worse than anything she had imagined. He confessed that he had purchased the rifle from Kmart. On the night of August 17, 1995, he stayed in the guest room at his family's Great Falls home. He waited until everyone had gone to sleep. Then one by one, he killed them. First, his brother Raymond. Then his parents. He assumed the police would show up any minute. The sound of gunshots echoing through the upscale neighborhood surely couldn't go unnoticed. But no one came. The house remained silent. The neighborhood undisturbed. And just like that, Ed had gotten away with murder. To keep his secret buried, Ed crafted a lie so simple it was almost believable. He told friends and acquaintances in the U.S. that his family had died in a car accident in Taiwan. Meanwhile, he told relatives in Taiwan that his parents and brother had been killed in a car crash in the U.S. No one ever questioned it. He kept the Great Falls property immaculate, landscaping the lawn, maintaining the home, doing just enough to avoid suspicion. From the outside, everything looked normal. But inside, the house had been a grave for years. Eventually, Ed enlisted the help of a friend, Michael Reese. He convinced Michael to help dispose of the bodies. Together, they transported the remains and dumped them in the Chesapeake Bay. Then, as if none of this had happened, Ed took on a new identity. He began impersonating his brother Raymond, using his name to sell the family's home. The lie had worked. For a while, Mandy and Ed eventually married, trying to build a future together despite the shadows of his past. But the bliss didn't last. Ed's temper began to surface. The sweet, generous young man she had once known became unpredictable, angry, distant. Eventually, he left Mandy for another woman. They reconciled, briefly, trying to hold things together, but the damage had been done. After just a year of marriage, they divorced. Mandy had kept the secret buried, just like the bodies, out of fear. Fear for her own life. Fear for her daughters. She lived with the weight of Ed's confession, unsure of what he was capable of, if pushed too far. It wasn't until years later that someone else stepped forward. Ed's next girlfriend, Vicky. On March 29, 2002, Edward Chen was finally arrested, nearly 7 years after the murders of his parents and older brother. On December 9th of that same year, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 36 years in prison. But Ed's girlfriend, Vicky Henry, the very person who helped expose him, wasn't off the hook. She pleaded guilty to helping conceal the fact that Ed had looted nearly $800,000 from his parents' bank accounts after their murders. Vicky even went so far as to pose as Ed's mother to make withdrawals from the bank in Taiwan. In a twist that stunned investigators, Vicky later used $175,000 of that stolen money belonging to Ed's murdered parents to pay for his criminal defense. This case marked a chilling milestone in Virginia's legal history. The first time first-degree murder charges were successfully brought forward without the recovery of a single body. To this day, the remains of Wu Hong, Yeh-mei, and Raymond Chen have never been found. Thank you for listening to Capital Sin's True Crime Podcast. Until next time, stay safe.